I've kind of switched this up a little bit. I'm kind of fly by the seat of my pants a lot of times, I guess. But I was thinking about grit a lot and what all this means. And we're in a rural catalyst group, and we're actually talking about it, and we're thinking, what do we want to know about grit? And so this is, we're all in a position, like we're high up on the hierarchy of needs, right? We haven't grown up in a developing country that we're fighting for food, and we've got to figure out how to get day to day, and we've grown up in this different place than most of the world. And when we're raising our kids, we don't want to wish that upon them to how do you teach them grit? Well, we got to be tough on them. Well, that doesn't really feel good and seem good anymore, right? And so, like, I look at grit, and I have some experience with grit, I guess, and I can give you my grit resume. I grew up with a schizophrenic father, and through that, my parents were divorced, and so at a young age, that's really tough. Like, I was the kid that was pulled out of class and to go meet with a counselor, and I got a target on my chest, and so you grit through some of those things, and it gave me some stepping stones to learn grit. And then later on in life, in high school, I was diagnosed with bone cancer, and I battled that for 8 years and ended up in an amputation. And so I've been an amputee for 20 years now. So those are some things that have gone through that. And I'm an entrepreneur. I have actually 2 failed businesses if you look at it as like they're closed, but if you look at it as what I learned from it as a stepping stone for my next businesses, that mean they were huge successes. But through those, when you throw in failure, there's some sort of grit that goes on. My last bout with grit, I guess, was I make dog braces, and so for legs, not teeth, and my business started doubling very quickly, and I started worrying, like, how am I going to be able to continue to produce this? I'm in a small town of 900 people. How can I get the workforce? In another community, there was another company that had similar manufacturing styles, and I was in a rush to get it and acquire this company. And after I bought it, 3 weeks later, a person quit, and production dropped by 60% overnight. And I went into this tailspin of a year and a half trying to save this other business, and late nights and a lot of worry and whatnot. And we got through it, and both businesses are profitable now, but it was really, really scary and really, really tough. In a lot of ways, it was tougher than even going through the cancer or the other things. But I was prepared through all that. And when we're trying to raise our kids, we don't want to put them in that tough of situations to get grit. And we want to learn grit. And so I want to talk about just some things that I've reflected on that if we look at this as practicing grit when you don't need it, right? It's like you practice your fire drill and your tornado policies in times that are calm, so everything can go smoothly during those times. Because when you get into the middle of grit, nothing makes sense in your head, and you're spinning all these trying to manage that. And so I want to talk about some of those skills, if we can work on them when things are going good, and just try to challenge ourselves a little bit every day. When you get into those situations, you don't really even know that you're practicing grit, and all of a sudden you're on the other side of it, and you can be successful from it. So, going the wrong way. I spoke a little bit about this in the beginning of our Maslow hierarchy of needs. Like, a lot of what we talk about is generational. The boomers versus the Xers versus millennials and whatnot. The boomers, when they grew up, 90% are on a lower hierarchy of needs than where the Xers did. They went up, and that's because we all want more for our kids. And so, trying to figure out how to manage grit up here is much different than down here. And so when we hear those things from our parents and grandparents, you just got to be tough on them. Well, it's not the same now in how we do that. And so it's always important to keep that in the perspective of who you're talking to, of where they are right now and where they learned theirs in the beginning. And so then you can carry on the conversation much better that way. Grit really starts with falling in love. And with anything, like, I was in love with life is what got me through cancer, right? And having, but there's like with your job. So if you're trying to grit through a job and I don't love it right now, and and as millennials, you're saying, well, you're entitled. They're jumping from job to job. Xers did that. Boomers did that in this point of your life, right? But like my journey, like I didn't wake up when I was 8 and say, hey, I'm going to make dog braces. It's just, nobody even thought of it, right? And so like, I had an amputation, so then I went to prosthetic school, and then I started hanging out at my uncle's vet clinic, and he introduced me to this other vet that was doing these cool things. And even at that, I did it for 5 years before I actually decided to make it a business, right? And so it's this journey of falling in love with something, and once you're in love with whatever your passion is, and I mean, right now you're like looking for your why. A lot of people are, it's a lot of talk about that. But your why it's a journey getting to that. And as soon as you have that, like grit comes more natural, and it's a lot easier to push through that. But don't feel bad if you're switching for another job. You've got to bring more things together so you can find out what you're falling in love with. Just don't fall in love with dog braces. I don't need any competition right now. Another thing that we need to understand that it's changed a lot in the last 10 or 15 years. When I graduated from high school, I was the only one in my class that had a computer. And I got it from Make-A-Wish, actually, and now everybody has a computer in their pocket. And through all of these, every app, every computer program is made, one of their core things is to get you to use that as much as they can. So they're trying to form a habit, and it becomes an addiction in some cases, okay? And so we have to understand that, but the thing is you can gamify this for yourself, Like when your Facebook thing comes up, you got that little red dot in there. It says I got 1, 4, 7. Well, today I'm going to wait until I have 10 before I actually push that button and check it, right? You can do little things like that, but the first part is just realizing what's pulling you away from those things, and that's just little things of practicing grit on small scales of taking that instant gratification and putting it an hour later and then 2 hours later, right? We've got to figure out how to manage our need for instant gratification. And it's everybody, it's every generation that does it. The next big thing that I like to think about practicing and where I can really bring it out is when I had cancer. I was sitting in a treatment room. A lot of times they'd have a group treatment room, and it was so you could kind of talk and help each other through things. And there's another kid my same age that came in, and he was very resentful. He was scornful to his mom, and he was in a wheelchair. I was still walking, but I sat there, and at first it hit me as like, that guy's not going to make it. And I didn't know why, but it was just something that he's not going to make it, and he didn't. It was weird to even think that, but then I reflected on that more, and I was grateful that I could walk and he couldn't, and I really started taking that from then on. Like, no matter how bad my life is, there's always someone that's one rung worse. You got 2 noses, but maybe someone else has 2 noses, but they have gas problems, right? And so like, there's always something worse. You can, even if you don't know them, you can imagine that that's worse. So be grateful for that. And like, well, Kayla wants us to have this interactive, and this was kind of a part where I wanted to interactive of how do people at this point actually show their gratitude to people? I mean, what are people putting this in practice and trying to do it on a daily or act it or weekly? Do you make it a part of your process? Is it anybody sure? I didn't start this. I have to give this credit to Renee. But every night when we put the kids to sleep, we ask them to say what they're thankful for and who they want to give blessings to. And I think that's really important to just bring out the thankful part. And it's, sometimes it's just, we got a Slurpee today, or, but I mean, it's a good practice, I think. And it's like on those really tough days when you're in the middle of all this, like just being able to pull away and write that card to someone. I mean, it gives you shivers, and then for some reason, just the whole day works better and you can get through it. So it's just a good practice to get through those. This is actually a boy that we went to. I used to go to Guatemala and fit prosthetics down there. He is Melvin. He rode on a bus 10 hours from the mountains of Guatemala with his mom. And then they waited for 10 hours one day. We couldn't get to them. And it was 10 hours the next day before when we finally got to see him. And they didn't have a place to stay when they came to the city. So someone else there helped them with that. But they're, just so appreciative of that. And, again, first world problems versus, developing countries. This is the biggest thing that helped me get through the entrepreneurial thing in this last part, okay? And it's really, really tough. So when you're going through turmoil, people's anxieties levels are high, and they know certain things, and I want these sheets square, and they go to that. But to get out of really tough situations, the 80-20 rule, I switch it the other way. The 20% of what you do makes that 80% of the impact. And you've got to drop all these other things that people are yelling and screaming in your ear, and you've got to go for that 20% and spend all of your effort in doing it. And I can't tell you that I'm great at it. I'm still not great at it. I'm very scattered. But when you get into those situations, focusing that is going to get you quicker through that and out of it. So everyone, as soon as that calms down, then we can take care of the little things on the outside. And in doing that, as a leader and wherever you're at, you have to continue to work with that. And maybe that's your 20%, is making sure that everybody knows it. You're triaging something, right? And so you have to be the person directing it, but you also have to be realizing that they have a heightened state of emotion too. If a business is going under, they're going to lose their job. How am I going to feed my kid? So when anxiety is that high, you don't make the same decisions as you do when anxiety is low, okay? And it's across the board. And so you have to realize that we've got to be able to get to that. And the way that I remember, sorry, the way I always think about that is too, so multitasking, like we always talk about, well, how do I get more done and this and that? My high school math teacher said, add these two numbers, right? You can't add all 6 digits at once. You have to break it down into one problem, 2 problems, actually carry the 1, 4 problems, right? And so you have to break it down in that. And to think that you can be doing 2 things good at once is a lie. You can't, you're neglecting one or the other or both. And so you've got to focus on one, then one, and then one. And then I learned this, I mean, if you have children, you learn this very quickly. Renee and I, if we're both missing sleep, we're like, okay, at least you get sleep so we have someone that has the right mind about it, And so this is really tough, and it's really tough to do, and I went from college where I'd party until 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I could sleep on Saturday, and now I don't have that luxury of doing that. And as you have more anxieties, it's tougher to sleep. But if you can focus on this, it makes all the other things easier, because that heightened state turns down, and then you make the good decisions of what should I be focusing on, who should I be helping. And I really believe sleep is so should I stop? So important. But it is, and just learning how to do that. And I wish I had good reading material for that, but I don't. These are some really good books that I've taken some of this from. Grit is, a lot of that talks about falling in love and the whole process of it. The one thing is about focus and multitasking, and versus how do you where do you work, where do you put your efforts. Predictably irrational, it has some things about when you're thinking in a high anxiety versus a normal state. But these are all good books to read for the people that read, and that's it. That's it.